I'm leaving you and moving to Palm Springs with my 25-year-old boyfriend. I'm taking all our money with me. The text arrived at 3 a.m. local time in the Persian Gulf, just after I had wrapped up a 14-hour shift on the rig. My name is Miles Harrington. I'm 52 years old and have spent the past 27 years working on oil platforms around the globe. My hands were still coated with grease when I opened a message from Krista, my wife of 18 years. I stared at the screen as another message popped up, a screenshot of our joint bank account, now showing a balance of 2 cents where $142,000 used to be. She even added a little kiss emoji, like it was some kind of joke. I didn't smash my phone or punch the wall. I just sat on my bunk in the cramped quarters I shared with 2 other rig workers and typed back, "Sure. Good luck." Then I shut off my phone and went to take a shower. The guys noticed something was off the next morning when I skipped breakfast and headed straight to work. Jackson, my second in command, kept shooting me glances during the safety inspections, but he knew better than to ask. We had 16 workers relying on us to keep this floating metal city running safely. Personal issues stayed personal out here. During the lunch break, I checked my email. Krista had already filed for divorce, claiming I'd abandoned the marriage by spending too much time working overseas. She had hired a lawyer named Bradley, who specialized in high-asset divorce cases. They were demanding spousal support, citing my substantial income. To add insult to injury, she noted that her emotional support partner had already moved into our home in Odessa. I closed the laptop without a word and returned to my shift. No one needed to know. That night, I sent a single email, not to Krista, but to my cousin Brendan, an accountant in Houston. "Time to activate Protocol Winter," I wrote. It was a code phrase we'd agreed on years ago. No need for further explanation. 3 minutes later, he responded, "Already on it. Don't reply to anything until you're back stateside." I still had 2 weeks left on my rotation. 2 more weeks of 12-hour days under the brutal 110-degree heat, while the life I thought I had back home crumbled. I could have asked for emergency leave. The guys would have understood. But what good would it do? Better to finish the contract and collect the paycheck. That evening, as I prepared to turn in, the rig supervisor, Vincent, stopped by my quarters. "Everything stable?" he asked. He wasn't just talking about the drilling ops. "Everything's under control," I said. And it was more than Krista could ever imagine. I met Krista 19 years ago at my buddy's fishing supply store in Odessa. She was 31 at the time, working the register, full of jokes about city folks who thought catching bass was complicated. I was 33, already a decade into oil work, home between contracts, helping my friend restock inventory. We married 11 months later. Fast, maybe, but it felt right. By then, I'd already built a solid foundation. I owned my house outright thanks to a lucky investment in a small oil producer that got bought out, and I had a steady, lucrative career offshore. She said she admired my stability, my ambition. I admired her fire, the way she could charm a room effortlessly. The rotation schedule was always the hardest part. 2 months on, 1 month off back then. But the money was worth it. I could make in 6 months what most folks in town earned in 3 years. We agreed it was a sacrifice worth making. She'd keep things running at home. I'd build our future. Around year 12, the cracks started forming. Small things at first. Complaints about missed anniversaries, questions about whether I really needed that Saudi contract, comparisons to her friends' husbands who were always around for dinner. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. When I turned 47, she stopped asking when I'd be home. She stopped sending pictures of her days. Our video calls grew shorter and more awkward, but I told myself it was just the natural evolution of a long-distance marriage. Comfort replacing excitement, routine replacing uncertainty. Last Christmas, I came home to find she'd completely redecorated the house without mentioning a word. New furniture, new colors, new atmosphere. When I asked about it, she shrugged and said, I needed a change. I didn't ask what kind of change she meant. 2 months ago, I noticed transfers from our joint account to an unfamiliar account. House repairs, she claimed. The foundation needed work, supposedly. Before I left for this rotation, I drove by the house. No construcción cruz. But a sleek black Audi I'd never seen before sat in the driveway. 4 weeks ago, she stopped answering my calls altogether. Only short texts, saying she was busy with a new project. I almost flew home early. Almost. But I convinced myself to trust my wife of nearly 2 decades. 3 days ago, our neighbor Harold sent a photo, a moving truck outside our house. "Thought you should know," was all his message said. I didn't respond. Sometimes silence is better. Sometimes you let the truth reveal itself. The day after Krista's text, after my shift ended, the satellite phone rang. It was Brendan. "You sitting down?" he asked. "Just tell me," I said. He didn't soften the blow. "She's been planning this for at least 14 months. Regular transfers to a separate account under her maiden name. Started small, 2-3 grand at a time. Then larger amounts over the last 90 days. Total moved, $214,000. Not just the $142,000 you saw." The room seemed to spin for a second. That was far more than what had been in our visible joint savings. "There's something else," Brendan added. "She changed the beneficiaries on your life insurance policy 6 months ago, and she took out a $40,000 home equity line of credit against the house. Forged your signature." I sat there on the bunk, listening to the low hum of the rig's generators, feeling the weight of 18 years together. Nearly 2 decades of a life now reduced to this. And she had been carefully erasing me from our life piece by piece for over a year. "The guy?" I finally asked. "Devin Forrester, 25, just like she said. A former personal trainer. No real employment record for the past 3 years. 3 prior relationships with women over 45. Each one ended within 18 months. I didn't need anyone to spell out the pattern for me." And Miles, Brendan's voice dropped lower. "There are credit card transactions for 2 one-way tickets to Palm Springs. Booked for next Tuesday." That was just 3 days away. She hadn't simply left me. She was vanishing, trying to disappear with everything before I even made it home. I hung up and sat alone in the dark of my small quarters for a long time. Didn't bother turning on the lights. Just sat there, watching memories reshuffle themselves in my mind like puzzle pieces forming a different image. The late-night phone call she used to take outside. The sudden obsession with fitness 3 years ago. The complaints about money, even though we were financially comfortable. What cut the deepest wasn't just the betrayal. It was the cold, calculated dismantling of our life while smiling to my face. While accepting the money I sent home. While telling me she missed me. Something hardened inside of me then. The hurt crystallized into something sharper, colder. I walked to my locker and grabbed my laptop. Opened the secret email account only Brendan and I knew about. Logged into the holding company we'd quietly established 8 years ago, after I watched a coworker lose everything in a nasty divorce. Winter Holdings, named after my grandmother's maiden name and the little creek that ran through our family property. The account balance loaded, $1.6 million. I've been diverting 70% of my income there for 8 years. Legal, reported on taxes, but kept distinct from marital assets through the corporate structure Brendan had set up. I sent a single email to my attorney in Houston. Proceed with Operation Cold Return. Then I closed the laptop and headed down to the mess hall for coffee. For the first time in days, I actually felt hungry. I landed in Houston 38 hours after finishing my rotation. Brendan met me at the airport, handed me a burner phone and a folder full of documents. "She's been blowing up your regular phone since yesterday," he said as we walked his car. "The bank froze the account she wired the money into. Standard procedure for suspicious large movements. They're asking you to come verify everything in person. She doesn't know I'm back. Nobody does except me and Thomas. Thomas, my lawyer. But that's not the most interesting part," Brendan added. He pulled out his tablet and showed me a series of screenshots. Messages between Krista and someone saved under D. I scrolled through them quickly. Plans of their new life. Jokes about me working offshore while they spent my money. Details about the house they already put a deposit on in Palm Springs. But one exchange from 2 days ago made me stop. "Krista, bank froze the money. Need Miles to verify in person. What do we do?" "D, he's still on the rig for 10 more days. Tell him there's an emergency with your mom. Get him to authorize you to handle it. You're still his wife. Krista, he's not answering my calls. D, try harder. We need that money before the house closing next week. Otherwise, we might have to go to Plan B. Krista, I'm not comfortable with Plan B. D, it's just insurance money. He works a dangerous job for a reason. Accidents happen all the time. I handed the tablet back to Brendan. My hands were steady but cold. These admissible? I asked. They're from the cloud backup on her phone. She used your Apple ID when she set up her new device last year. Never changed the password. Everything's been syncing to your cloud storage. We drove straight to Thomas's office. He had already prepared the divorce petition, a criminal complaint for forgery regarding the home equity loan, and an emergency motion to freeze all assets. There's a wrinkle, Thomas said once we were seated. She filed a domestic violence claim against you yesterday. Claims she fled due to ongoing emotional abuse and financial control. Says she feared for her safety. That's ridiculous, I said. I've been 6,000 miles away for the last 7 weeks. Doesn't matter. It's a move to gain sympathy with the judge and to justify taking immediate possession of the assets. Her attorney's pushing for an emergency hearing tomorrow to get a restraining order and exclusive use of the house. So she wants to bar me from my own home while her boyfriend lives there. Thomas nodded grimly. And it gets worse. The home equity loan she took out, she already funneled it into an LLC registered under Devin Forster's name 3 days after getting the funds. I exhaled slowly. Options. We counter immediately. Fraud, forgery, alienation of affection, criminal conspiracy based on those text messages. We'll request an emergency freeze on all accounts, including the LLC. He slid a document across the desk. And we file this. I looked down. Motion to dismiss domestic violence allegations with evidence of perjury. What evidence? Thomas gave a thin smile. Your security badge location logs prove you've been offshore continuously for 7 weeks. Your passport entry and exit stamps back it up. And I subpoenaed your phone record for the past year. Nothing even hinting at arguments or threats. I signed everything where he indicated. One more thing, Thomas said. You need to act surprised when she's served. She can't know you're back. As far as anyone knows, you're still overseas. I nodded. I can handle that. As I left Thomas's office, my burner phone buzzed. A text from Krista to my regular number. Please call me. It's an emergency. I need you. I didn't reply. The trap was set, but this time, not by her. I stayed at Brendan's place. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I logged into the security camera feed for our house in Odessa, a system I had installed 3 years ago and maintained remotely. Krista had either forgotten about it or assumed I couldn't access it from overseas. The footage showed a young man lounging by the pool. Our pool, drinking from my whiskey collection and wearing what looked like my old college sweatshirt. He was on my phone, laughing with someone, feet propped up on the outdoor furniture I had built by hand. While I watched, Krista appeared on screen. She looked tense, pacing as she spoke. I couldn't hear the audio, but her body language was unmistakable. Things were not going according to plan. Brendan came in with coffee. You should see this, he said, opening his laptop. He had spent the night digging deeper into Devin Forster's background. What he uncovered changed everything. He's done this before, Brendan said, turning the screen toward me. 3 times. Each time, the same pattern. Meets a woman, usually married, always financially secure. A relationship forms. She leaves her husband, taking as much money as possible. They move away together. Within 18 months, he vanishes with whatever's left. The screen displayed news articles, court documents, social media posts. 3 women across 5 years, all left financially devastated. One still struggling with credit card debt Devin had racked up in her name. There's more, Brendan added quietly. He was briefly a person of interest in the death of his second girlfriend's ex-husband. A suspicious car accident 6 weeks after their divorce filing. The man drove off a cliff on a road he'd known for 20 years. No charges were filed, but the implication hung heavily between us. My phone rang. Krista again, calling my regular number. I let go to voicemail. You need to hear this, Brendan said, playing the message on speaker. Miles, please. I need you to call the bank. Krista's voice cracked with what sounded like tears. There's been a misunderstanding with our account. I was just moving money to a safer investment like we talked about, but the bank froze everything. I can't access any funds. Please call them and tell them it's okay. I'm really scared. We had never discussed any such thing. The performance was convincing. I might have believed her just 2 weeks ago. She's desperate, Thomas said when we met him for lunch. The house closing in Palm Springs is 5 days away. They need that money. What's our next move? I asked. The emergency hearing is this afternoon. Judge Winters is presiding. She has zero tolerance for false domestic violence claims. We have your documented alibi ready and the bank records. We filed to have the funds returned to you exclusively. But there's something else you should know. Thomas slid a folder across the table. Your neighbor Harold sent these to my office this morning. Inside were photos of furniture being loaded into a moving truck. My furniture, family heirlooms, things that have been in my family for generations. They're clearing out the house, Thomas confirmed. They're planning to disappear, whether they get the bank money or not. I closed the folder and handed it back. Change of plans. Both men looked at me. I want to go home. That's not advisable, Thomas started. Not to confront them, I clarified. To watch from Harold's place. I want to see it with my own eyes. And I want to be there when they're served, not hiding behind legal papers. I want Krista to see my face when her world falls apart. Thomas nodded slowly. I'll arrange it. As we left the restaurant, a text came through on my burner phone. It was from Harold. They're packing your grandfather's desk now, the one you restored. Thought you'd want to know. Some thefts go beyond money. Some betrayals cut deeper than others. This had just gotten personal in a whole new way. The 6-hour drive to Odessa gave me plenty of time to think. Thomas had arranged for the sheriff to serve the papers at 9 a.m. the next morning. Brendan set up surveillance from Harold's house across the street, where I would stay overnight. Everything was in motion. Harold greeted me with a silent handshake when I arrived just after midnight. He was a retired petroleum engineer who had worked rigs for 30 years. No explanation was needed. She has no idea you're watching? I asked once inside. None, he said. They've been busy packing all day, loading the good stuff, leaving the junk. He pointed to his front window, offering a clear view of my driveway. 2 moving trucks already came and went. Big ones are coming tomorrow for the final load. I nodded, absorbing the information. Anyone else been by? Some woman with a clipboard yesterday looked like a real estate agent. That was unexpected. They're selling the house. Looks like it. Saw her taking photos. I called Thomas, who promised to check property records first thing in the morning. At 3 a.m., unable to sleep, I sat at Harold's kitchen table, reviewing the documentation Brendan had gathered. Bank records showing Krista's systematic draining of our accounts. Phone records revealing hours of calls to Devon stretching back over a year. Credit card statements showing hotel charges in our own town on days she had claimed to be visiting her sister. There was a cold, brutal clarity in seeing the evidence laid out like that. Not just a fleeting betrayal, but a calculated extraction, a deliberate, methodical dismantling of everything we had built. By sunrise, Thomas texted confirmation. Krista had listed our house with a real estate agency 2 days earlier. The asking price was 30% below market value, priced for a fast sale. She had forged my signature on the listing agreement. At 8:30 a.m., I watched from Harold's kitchen window as Krista and Devon loaded the last items into Devon's black Audi. Small, valuable things, easy to transport. My grandmother's silver picture frames. The antique watch my father had given me before he died. At 8:45 a.m., a large moving truck pulled up. 3 men got out and approached the house, right on schedule. At 8:55 a.m., an unmarked car parked behind the moving truck, blocking it in. 2 sheriff's deputies and a woman in a business suit stepped out. Thomas had sent a court officer with them. It's time, I said to Harold. I walked across the street as the deputies approached my front door. Krista answered. Her expression shifted from irritation to confusion as the officers identified themselves. Mrs. Harrington, we have documents to serve you and the gentleman on the premises. I remained just out of view, observing from the edge of the driveway as the color drained from her face. She called for Devon, who appeared behind her, wrapping his arms protectively around her waist. That's when I stepped into sight. The expression on Krista's face is something I'll never forget. Shock shifting to fear, then quickly to calculation. Devon merely looked bewildered. Miles, she whispered, you're supposed to be on the rig. Surprise, I said softly, nodding to the deputies to continue. They handed over a thick stack of documents, an emergency restraining order against them, a freeze on all assets, a criminal complaint for forgery, nullification of the home sale listing, and a notice of divorce proceedings citing fraud and criminal conspiracy. You can't do this, Devin blurted out, puffing up his chest. She's scared of you. We have a domestic violence claim. Dismissed this morning by Judge Winters, I cut him off. Hard to abuse someone from 6,000 miles away. The judge was particularly interested in the text messages discussing your Plan B involving my life insurance policy. Devin's face lost all color. Krista stepped closer, tears already brimming. Miles, this is all just a misunderstanding, she pleaded. I was just saving her documents. I finished for her, motioning toward the moving truck. Protecting our assets by clearing out our house. Planning our future by selling the home behind my back. She had no response. You have 30 minutes to remove personal items only, the court officer instructed. Clothing and toiletries. Everything else stays pending court inventory. As they went inside under supervision, I turned to leave. Where are you going? Krista cried after me. I didn't look back. Home. The hearing took place 3 weeks later. I sat at one table with Thomas. Krista and her attorney sat at the other. Devin was notably absent. He had disappeared 2 days after being served, taking Krista's remaining cash and jewelry with him. A pattern Brendan had predicted perfectly. The judge methodically reviewed the evidence. Bank statements, forged documents, text messages, location data. When she reached the text about Plan B and the insurance money, she stopped, looking directly at Krista. Mrs. Harrington, are you aware of the penalties for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud? Or worse? Krista's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. It wasn't like that, Your Honor, Krista stammered. Devin was joking. I would never. Save it for the criminal proceedings, the judge interrupted sharply. This court's concern is the division of assets and the dissolution of marriage. She continued reading, occasionally shaking her head. When she finished, she set the papers down and removed her glasses. In my 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such a clear case of deliberate financial betrayal within a marriage, she said, glaring at Krista. You systematically emptied joint accounts while forging documents and planning to abscond with marital assets. Turning to me, her tone softened slightly. Mr. Harrington, while your creation of separate accounts through a holding company might raise eyebrows, the court finds you consistently paid household expenses, properly filed taxes, and made no attempt to hide assets from the government, only to safeguard them against potential future claims. Her ruling was immediate and decisive. All assets transferred by Krista would be returned to me. The house would remain solely in my name. Krista's claims for spousal support were denied. And, most satisfying of all, the judge referred the evidence of forgery and conspiracy to the district attorney for possible criminal charges. As we exited the courtroom, Krista tried to approach me. I simply kept walking. Some victories speak louder without words. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of my cabin outside Missoula, Montana. The property had always been part of Winterlight Holdings, 40 acres of pine woods and meadows I'd quietly bought 5 years earlier as a retirement plan. Krista had never known it existed. The forgery charges against her had been reduced through a plea bargain. No jail time, but 5 years of probation and restitution payments she'd likely never finish. Last I heard, she was living with her sister in Tulsa, working retail. Devin had already moved on, this time to a divorce doctor in Arizona. His pattern, it seemed, remained unbroken. I had taken early retirement from the oil company after 27 years. It was enough. Between investments, savings, and a modest natural gas royalty from property in Arkansas, I had plenty to live comfortably for the rest of my life. Harold called occasionally with updates from Odessa. I'd sold a house there. Too many painful memories. He had helped clear out the last of my things, shipping the family heirlooms to Montana and donating the rest. One afternoon, the mail brought an envelope from Brendan. Final paperwork dissolving Winterlight Holdings. Its purpose fulfilled, assets transferred, Taxes paid. Another chapter officially closed. As the sun sank behind the mountains, I poured a glass of bourbon and settled onto the porch swing I had built that summer. For the first time in years, no one was expecting anything from me. No crew waiting for orders, no wife pretending to miss me. Just silence and the sound of wind whispering through the pines. My phone rang. A project manager from a Canadian oil company offering a consulting role. Good pay, little travel, just sharing the knowledge I had gathered over decades. I'll think about it, I told him. And I would. But not tonight. Tonight was mine. For the peace I had earned. For the life I was finally living on my own terms.